The storm roared through the tavern like a living thing. Chains snapped midair, splintering into shards of silver. Enforcers were flung backward, their masks cracking against stone walls. The air glowed faintly, humming with voices only Elena could hear. Free. Strike. Run. When the silence returned, it was absolute. The townsfolk huddled in corners, wide-eyed, mugs of ale abandoned on overturned tables. Every gaze was fixed on Elena, her gown torn, her hair wild, the ledger clutched like a holy relic. She had not just fought. She had revealed herself. The enforcer captain staggered to his feet, his mask dented, his eyes burning with hate. "This isn't finished," he rasped. "The circle will brand you a heretic. You'll hang for what you've done." Leora kicked him hard in the chest, sending him sprawling. "Not tonight, you won't." She grabbed Elena's arm. "We move. Now." Clara trailed behind, pale and shaking, whispering under her breath. They saw. They all saw. They burst into the streets of Greymore. The storm's echo lingered, rattling shutters, making torches flicker. People spilled from doorways, staring as the three women fled through the cobblestone alleys. Some crossed themselves. Others whispered her name. Elena. The Stormbringer. But Elena heard both awe and fear. By the time they reached the Iron Quarter, horns were sounding across the city. Watchtowers lit with signals. The Circle's hunt had begun. Inside a half-collapsed foundry, they caught their breath. Elena's hands shook as she pressed the ledger to her chest. "I didn't mean to. You did what you had to," Leora cut in, her dagger dripping with blood. "They would have dragged you back to the Circle in chains." Clara sat heavily on a broken anvil, her eyes glassy. "You don't understand. By striking here, in public, you've changed everything. The Circle will call you a danger to order." But, she hesitated. "The people might call you something else." Elena's brow furrowed. "What?" Clara's lips trembled into a strange half-smile. "A savior." That night, as the city burned with whispers, Elena sat awake by the smoldering forge. The name from the ledger still pulsed in her mind, Marius Vale. If she was to survive, if she was to fight, she had to find him. Because now she wasn't just hunted. She was a symbol. And symbols couldn't hide forever. The Iron Quarter of Greymore reeked of soot and molten slag. Black smoke clung to every brick, and the clang of hammers rang through the streets. Here, the Circle's banners were fewer, but their shadows stretched longer. Whispered bribes, hidden chains, debts no one could pay. Elena pulled her cloak tighter as she, Leora, and Clara slipped through the narrow alleys. Every glance felt like a threat. Her name had spread, Stormbringer, and she could hear it muttered in markets and forges alike. Some whispered it with fear, others with reverence. The ledger pulsed faintly in her arms, the name Marius Vale glowing like a coal that refused to die. The voices urged her forward. "He waits. He knows. Find him." At the edge of the quarter, they found a forge that looked abandoned, windows shattered, the sign above the door scorched. Inside, the air was thick with rust and ash. "Elena," Leora murmured, her dagger drawn. "Stay behind me." But before they could move deeper, a voice drifted from the shadows. "I wondered when you'd come." A tall man emerged, his beard streaked with gray, his left arm ending in an iron prosthetic that gleamed faintly in the firelight. His eyes, sharp and heavy with knowledge, locked on Elena. "Marius Vale," Elena whispered. He nodded. "And you must be the one who broke the regent." Clara stiffened, her hand twitching nervously at her side. "If you know that, then you know we can't trust you. The Circle would pay dearly for her head." Marius let out a dry laugh. "The Circle already paid dearly for mine. That's why they cut me off." He lifted the iron arm, flexing the joints. "I was once their forge master. I built the chains that bound others. Until I refused to forge my own." Elena's breath caught. You defied them?" His gaze softened, almost pained. "I tried. They erased me instead. Took my name from their books, but not completely, it seems." His eyes flicked toward the ledger in her hands. "That's why you hear me. I'm one of the half-erased." The ledger pulsed, the voices whispering in agreement. Elena realized then why his name hadn't faded. He was caught between the circle's grip and freedom. Marius stepped closer. You've touched the storm. You've woken the names. But do you understand what you carry? That book is no weapon, not by itself. It's a beacon. And soon, every circle hand across the continent will come to snuff it out. Elena's joy tightened. Then help me fight them. Marius studied her for a long moment, the forge's dim light flickering across his scarred face. Finally, he said, fight them? Child, you don't fight a shadow by swinging your fists. You burn the source of its light. Leora frowned. What are you saying? Marius's gaze turned grim. The circle doesn't live in mansions or masks. It lives in the archive, a vault of names older than kingdoms. Every regent, every chain, every rewriting begins there. Destroy the archive and the circle falls. The ledger in Elena's hands thrummed violently, the voices surging. Yes! Archive. Break it. Burn it. Elena's pulse hammered. The mansion had been one battle. But the archive, the circle's heart, would be a war. For the first time, she saw the scale of her fight. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid. The forge's embers glowed faintly, casting Marius Vale's face in a haunted light. He leaned heavily on his iron arm, eyes never leaving the ledger in Elena's grasp. The archive, he said at last, his voice low. It's the circle's beating heart. A vault where every name is etched in binding ink, the chains that fuel their power. Elena felt the ledger pulse, the voices rising to a murmur. Archive, break it, free us all. Her throat tightened. Where is it? Marius's jaw clenched. He moved to a rusted workbench and swept away scraps of metal. Beneath them lay a folded parchment, brittle with age. He opened it carefully, revealing a map drawn in crimson ink. A mountain range stretched across the page. At its center, a black mark shaped like an eye. The hollow spire, Marius explained. An old cathedral built into the cliffs. To the world, it's a ruin. But below it lies the archive, guarded by more than chains and masks. It's where the circle was born. Leora bent over the map, her dagger tapping against the inked mountain pass. That's weeks away, through territory thick with circle loyalists. We'll be hunted every step. Clara's face was pale, her voice trembling. It's worse than that. The archive isn't just guarded. It's alive. They say it whispers to intruders, turns them against themselves. No one who's entered without the circle's blessing has ever returned. The ledger pulsed violently, the whispers filling Elena's mind. Return us, free us, you must go. Elena steadied her breath, forcing the voices back. Then that's where I'm going. Marius's sharp eyes locked onto her. Be careful what you declare, girl. Once you set your sights on the archive, there is no turning back. You'll be hunted not as prey, but as a rival. The circle will throw armies at you. Elena's grip on the ledger tightened. Let them. They already branded me the Stormbringer. I'd rather be their rival than their prisoner. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then Marius let out a grim laugh. You've got fire, I'll give you that. But fire alone doesn't win wars. You'll need allies, more than the three of us. Clara looked up sharply, fear etched across her face. Allies? If word spreads of what she's carrying, half the world will flock to her and the other half will try to kill her. She'll be a banner for rebellion, or a curse. Elena's gaze hardened. Then let them choose. But I won't fight shadows alone. Leora smirked, slipping her dagger back into its sheath. Good. Because I've been waiting for someone to put a blade to the circle's throat. Count me in. Even Clara, though still trembling, said nothing more. Marius folded the map and pressed it into Elena's hands. Then you'll need to move quickly. The circle won't wait for you to find the archive. They'll strike first. And when they do, you'll learn whether the storm you carry is strong enough to break kingdoms. Elena felt the ledger's heat seep into her bones, the voices surging in response to her resolve. The regent had fallen. The circle's mask had cracked. Now the hollow spire waited. And with it, the chance to tear the circle's heart from its chest. The road out of Greymoor was thick with fog, the kind that muffled footsteps and swallowed sound. Elena rode at the front of their ragged group, Leora at her side, Marius hunched over in the saddle behind, and Clara trailing, eyes darting at every shadow. Each mile put distance between them and the smoldering city, but Elena felt the circle's eyes even in the mist. Whispers traveled faster than horses. By now, the world knew the regent had fallen, and that she had done it. At a crossroads hamlet, they stopped for food. Farmers and smiths crowded the square, whispering as Elena dismounted. Their eyes were wide, their mouths tight with fear and wonder. "She's the Stormbringer," someone muttered. "No," another hissed. "The circle says she's cursed." Elena froze. The circle's reach had already spread their story. That evening, as they sheltered in a barn, Marius unfolded a broadsheet stolen from a courier. The parchment was fresh, stamped with the circle's seal. Across the top in bold ink, "The Heretic of Greymoor, a warning to all loyal subjects." Beneath it was a crude sketch of Elena, wild hair, burning eyes, the ledger clutched like a demon's book. The text painted her as a sorceress who had murdered the regent, enslaved his soul, and sought to topple the natural order. Clara's hands shook as she read. "They've turned you into a monster." Elena's stomach nodded. Or a symbol. Depends who believes them. And not everyone did. As they moved from village to village, they found signs of quiet rebellion, a family who whispered blessings under their breath as they handed Elena bread, a miner who touched his cap and said, "Stormbringer, break their chains." Leora smirked. "See? Fear cuts both ways. Some want to burn you, but some want to follow you." Marius's tone was grim. "That's what makes you dangerous to the circle. Not your storm. Your banner." One night, as rain lashed the hills, they took shelter in an abandoned watchtower. Elena stood at the crumbled parapet, watching lightning split the sky. She thought of the faces she'd seen, the terrified, the hopeful, the doubting. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't asked to be rewritten, remade, turned into someone else's vessel. But now she was something new, not Ethan, not just Elena, but the storm that carried 1,000 voices. And the world had already chosen sides. She turned back to her companions, the map of Hollow Spire spread across the stone floor. "We can't sneak there in silence anymore," she said, her voice steady despite the storm. "The circle already made me a banner, so I'll carry it." Clara's eyes widened, fear and awe mingling. "You mean, rally them? Outright?" Elena nodded. "Yes. If the circle calls me a heretic, then I'll be a heretic. If they call me a storm, then I'll be the storm. Either way, I won't hide." Marius's grim smile was almost proud. "Then may the circle learn what happens when their weapon learns to wield itself." Far below in the valley, torches flickered, a patrol moving with unnatural precision. The circle was already hunting. And Elena knew the next step wasn't survival. It was war. Dawn broke over the valley in streaks of silver and gold. From the ruined watchtower, Elena watched torches snake along the roads below, circle patrols, methodical and merciless. The hunt had tightened. But for once, she didn't feel hunted. She felt ready. The ledger pulsed faintly in her arms, not with chaos, but with steady rhythm, like a heartbeat syncing with her own. The whispers were no longer screams, they were a chorus. "Lead. Lead. Lead." Leora tightened her sword belt. "They're closing in. If we wait, they'll box us in." Marius's iron hand clenched into a fist. "Then we hit them first. Show them what happens when the circle bleeds." Clara looked between them, pale but resolved. "If we do this, there's no going back. Every town, every hamlet will hear of it. You won't just be the Stormbringer anymore, Elena. You'll be rebellion itself." Elena stepped to the crumbling wall, gazing at the valley below. Farmers, miners, smiths, ordinary people were already stirring, watching the patrols with fear. But when their eyes lifted toward the watchtower, they saw her. And they didn't look away. She raised the ledger high. The morning light caught its scorched pages, sending a shimmer across the valley. The voices surged, and the air itself seemed to vibrate. The circle patrol halted, their formation faltering. Torches flickered. Chains rattled uneasily. Elena's voice carried across the hills. "I am not your puppet. I am not your prisoner. I am the storm you created, and I will break your chains." The sky answered. Thunder rolled, lightning splitting the horizon. The townsfolk gasped, some falling to their knees, others raising their fists in defiance. The circle soldiers hesitated, fear breaking their perfect order. For the first time, the circle looked small. Leora drew her blade with a grin. Well said. Now, let's make it true. Marius shouldered his iron arm, grim resolve etched into his face. The hollow spire will shake when word of this reaches them. Even Clara, trembling, uncertain Clara, straightened, her voice soft but steady. If I must choose between chains and storm, then I'll walk with the storm. The valley erupted. Farmers grabbed tools as weapons, miners hefted hammers, smiths lit torches. The circle patrol broke under the sudden surge, their chains clattering as they fled back toward Greymoor. And above it all, Elena stood at the watchtower, the ledger blazing in her hands, the voices roaring in unity. She was no longer Ethan. She was no longer just Elena. She was the storm, and the world would know it. The Regent's fall had been only the beginning. Now, with the hollow spire looming and rebellion stirring in every shadow, Elena's journey was no longer about survival. It was about leading a storm that could either free the world or consume it. Weeks passed, and the world shifted on its axis. In villages where the circle's banners once fluttered, whispers now carried Elena's name instead, the Stormbringer. Farmers spoke of lightning-breaking chains. Miners swore they had seen the sky itself bow when she raised the ledger. Some called her a savior. Others, poisoned by the circle's lies, called her a heretic, but all agreed on one thing: she was no longer prey. She was a force. In the ashes of Greymoor, the circle regrouped. Regent dead, power fractured, they scrambled to restore their order. New leaders stepped from the shadows, more ruthless, more desperate. The name Elena Hale was etched on every decree of warning, every list of enemies to be destroyed. But fear was no longer enough to hold the people. Where one torch rose in defiance, 10 more followed. And in the chaos, rebellion began to spread like fire through dry grass. High in the mountains, in the hollow watchtower where her banner had first been unfurled, Elena stood with her companions. Leora sharpened her blade, eager for the fights to come. Marius mapped their route toward the hollow spire, grim but determined. And Clara, still wavering between fear and devotion, remained at Elena's side, not because she was forced, but because something in her had shifted too. Elena gazed at the horizon. The ledger glowed faintly at her chest, no longer a prison of names but a chorus. The voices no longer begged or screamed. They whispered with steady strength. Lead us. The storm was no longer inside her. It was around her, behind her, rising with every heart that dared to resist. And as lightning split the distant mountains, illuminating the jagged silhouette of the hollow spire, Elena smiled. The circle thought they had written her story. But the storm was just beginning to write its own.